Welcome back to One Winning Pod. It's been a while since we've talked to you, but we're here, we're back, and it's draft season, everybody. So we'll start off our episodes about the draft discussing the offense today, the offensive players, top to bottom, cross position groups. We'll do defense next week, and then we'll do like the Ravens targets the week after, and then maybe a few other shows, but that's about how we're going to do it. So these prospects, like that we're interested in, or we have new ideas from the Liars Luncheon or whatever, we can, change live. We're starting, on April 4th, but the draft is a little over 3 weeks away. So there's a lot of time for, things to change and more opinions to be had. But welcome back, guys. How you guys feeling?
Feeling good. I did a lot of cramming over the past few days. I started out my watching of tape about a month ago, guys, then got super busy and had to make up a lot of ground. So we'll see. I think I have a better handle of things than I felt 5 days ago. And I've found some guys at every position that look intriguing for Ravens needs. But yeah, I'm really excited to hear what your guys' thoughts are too. We really haven't talked too in depth about our ideas on the prospects aside from, a couple high profile ones. So it should be a fun discussion. It's always fun this time of year trying to figure out who might be a good fit for the Ravens, the Ravens will have an eye on. And even just, falling in love with some of these prospects and just being like, well, where are they going? And just hopefully they don't go to Pittsburgh again. We have a bad habit of that, of falling in love with players, whether they be Highsmith or Pickens, and then the Steelers listening in on our show and picking them up. So it's probably Steve. Steve's probably, the turncoat.
That's right.
Yeah, it's man, we definitely need some more excitement. I feel like the last couple of weeks with the Lamar situation is just kind of like, I don't know, I feel like it's soured things for me. So yeah, taking a look at the draft and figuring out, who the next crop of Ravens is going to be, regardless of that situation, makes me a little excited. Looking forward to it. So yeah, I think we could use some more good news and use some excitement.
It has been a while since we spoke, and I must admit that I think the Lamar situation has impacted all of us in our ability to get ramped up for the draft. I don't know about you, Peter, but that's part of the reason I think I had my doldrum of looking at film, because I too started off strong and then disappeared for a little bit, went into the wilderness, and then was like, I need to get my act into gear. And I started, looking at film again, and getting deep into these prospects. Before the show, we were discussing, we didn't do a show about the Lamar Jackson tweets, and there's a really good reason for that. And Peter, you got to tell the audience.
I mean, there's a really good reason for me, and that's the way my contract is written up. And specifically in my contract, I don't do shows specifically surrounded around tweets by players, media members, or any under that category. It's like I comment when it's real news, when it's just Twitter news. I wait for it to, make it happen in the real world. So if there's any episode that we need to do about Twitter feuds or just some random tweet, you guys are going to have to bring in a guest or someone, because it's a breach of my contract to do an episode on that.
Not even a sampling of Marlowe bad food takes or something. I mean, those are
tweets.
I
can't do. I can't do, because that sounds fun for the first 5 minutes, and then you're just like, Marlowe, man, just get off social media, man. Just go on a hike. Just find a new hobby.
Oh gosh. But yeah, it was a thing. I think none of us really were too impacted by it, other than just annoyed further that the situation exists. But I think the consensus was we all have our opinion about how this is going to play out, and not much of it has changed. So listen to our show that we talked about with with Alan, I guess. We are still all right there. Well, let's talk about prospects. Let's talk about giving Lamar Jackson some weapons. Let's talk about wide receiver. That's why you're all here, right? Wide receiver is a very interesting class. I have been digging into them for a while, and it's one of those classes I feel like you need to watch at least 30 players to have a full opinion of the class and really understand it. I'm about 25 deep, and I think there's definitely a few more players I want to see a little bit more of. But my overall thoughts about this class, as I've watched them, is I like them more and more as I watch them more. I started off thinking there was no great prospects, and that, the bet, like if Bateman was in this draft, he'd be the number 1 prospect, number 2 prospect. I still kind of feel that way about Bateman specifically, but I think a lot of these prospects are good players, could be great players. They're just very few slam dunk prospects, and they all have some bugaboo or something about them. It's a relatively undersized class, all things considered, but that doesn't mean that they're actually bad players or can't play on the perimeter. So all that to say, I guess I think it makes sense if one of these guys is there at 22 to draft it, and that player would be JSN, Jackson Smith and Jigba. He kind of rises up my board. I would say even for Zay Flowers or Addison or Quinn Johnson, I'm not feeling it at 22 as much, just based off of how I think the rest of the draft will go. But that's subject to change. I think the way I've looked at this class is I started liking players more and more, that I think it's totally reasonable at 86, the 3rd round pick, to get a player you quite like and kind of proceed from there, or even trade up and get a player you'd love. So we'll see. But yeah, I guess that's my high level overview before we start looking at actual prospects. I don't know how to approach this. I have 25 guys I could talk about.
Oh my God.
Guys, wheel me in.
You have so many guys. I tried to watch film on all these guys. I did not. I failed. I did not get it all done. But I do kind of get what you're saying. I think I agree for the most part. I look at this wide receiver draft class and I'm like, I don't think the top is as strong as it's been in the past few seasons, but we've had some very strong wide receiver classes the past 3 seasons. So, at some point that was bound to trickle down. But I do think there's a lot of depth. There's a lot of guys here who look like they're going to be, rounds 2 through 4 guys who, as complementary pieces in offense, whether in the slot or whether, as deep specialists, they're guys that do something really well. They're not a complete package, really. I don't think there's too many complete tool wide receivers in this draft. I could be wrong, but that's just been my take so far. But there's a lot of guys who if you're drafting a guy to be an underneath slot guy, if you're drafting a guy, to run deep posts after the catch and win the jump ball, there's a guy for that. There's a lot of interesting prospects. Are these guys going to be, is there a lot of Pro Bowlers in this list? I don't know, and I lean to probably no, but there's certainly intriguing prospects here, and some of them I think could fit on the Ravens if they wanted to go that direction.
Yeah, I definitely think the challenge here is just, what capital is available for the Ravens to use at wide receiver. I think most of us as fans would love to have that 1st round pick be, pick one of the top receivers. But obviously with no 2nd round pick this year, it's, there's only one shot. After that, you're in the 3rd round. And I think, once you kind of hit that and after, the Ravens fans get less and less interested about what receivers that are available. So, just from that perspective, it's definitely going to be difficult. Yeah, I got to admit, a lot of these guys, I haven't looked at in depth, but I will say the guys from Tennessee, I had a chance to kind of look a little bit at their film because I did a look at their quarterback, Hendon Hooker, a little bit. And I got to say, the guys from Tennessee did a heck of a job just kind of winning one-on-one on a ton of those routes. I feel like most of the highlights I saw from Hooker were basically just throw it up to whoever's running a 9 route and have them win at the point of attack. We'll talk more about that Hooker later. I have some thoughts, but yeah, I thought in terms of the receiving game, I thought those guys were, consistently kind of winning. And if the Ravens want to get a guy who can, win some of those jump ball situations, I feel like either was it Jalen Hyatt? He might go early. Cedric Tillman, maybe a little bit later. He's a little bit more of a larger frame. I feel like either one of those guys, I wouldn't say no to. I think that could be kind of a good fit. Certainly, if you look at the room that we have now, I don't really think we have any guys who sort of fit that bill in terms of go up and go get it. Bateman's the closest, but honestly, that's not really his game. So, yeah, it could be interesting. I'm sure there are a couple other names on this list, maybe Alec, of maybe other guys that might fit in that kind of category. I feel like that's what really is missing from this offense right now.
Sure. Yeah, I can go with some rapid fire. Let's do it. So you talked about the Tennessee guys. You got Jalen Hyatt, 6 foot, 180 pounds. Kind of looks like a heavy slot player to me. Very fast. Everyone thought he would be faster though at the combine for what it's worth, but definitely a fast guy. I like the way his hands looked. Unfortunately, like the Tennessee offense, they'll call it gimmicky, and I'm sure we'll talk about that more with Hooker, but the footwork needed for good route running is not completely evident based on how they kind of do things there. His yak is all from breakaway speed, not so much from making people miss, which I think is worth pointing out. And then I have concerns about his ability to beat press coverage just because they always use the stack scheme in college. They give him like nice releases. So I don't dislike him. I just wouldn't like him at 22. People were all over the place with Hyatt. Some people have him like as close as wide receiver 2, and other people have him, wide receiver 10. So it's really difficult to say what people think. I'll say right now, though, Cedric Tillman is my favorite player in the draft. As far as like the guy I kind of fell in love with, not so much like go take him at 22, but in like a go find his right value and get him kind of player. I would say he's kind of my maybe Pickens of this year. I really love that player. He is a 5th-year senior, but he did break out in like at 21 years old. He's 23 now. That's one thing I'll point out too, is like there's a lot of 23 and 24-year-olds in this draft because of the COVID year. So this is kind of the year that we really see that impact. I love the way he tracks balls and wins contested catches by boxing out and using his strong hands. Fearless over the middle. He's physical. And I think he really reads leverage well, which I find super important for wide receivers. So Cedric Tillman is definitely one of my favorites. I love if we somehow got him in the 3rd round. I've seen some mocks of that. I do not believe that's possible. I think he'll go sooner. He's also starting to get some like love. I couldn't be surprised if he went early day 2. So we'll see. But I really like Cedric Tillman. Similarly, I heard, if you like Cedric Tillman, like the Netflix algorithm, you might like Jonathan Mingo, and I do. 6'2", 226 pounds, Ole Miss, fast and physical, high points the ball well. Poor man's A.J. Brown, maybe. Same school, same number, blocks for the rock. Like, you can't not like this guy. Super fast as well. He clocked in at, where is it? Boom, 4.46. With that frame, that is scary. I love this guy. Again, like I don't see him falling all the way to the 3rd round, but go up and get him wherever it is that you think that's necessary. And I'm a happy camper. So I would say Cedric Tillman and Jonathan Mingo are like my 2. I would love to target these players. There's other players I've started to warm up to, but like for various reasons, I'm not quite sure where I'm at. Xavier Hutchinson, he like sets up defenders well on short area routes. I think he still has some work to do though with his releases and stems. Good body control and has like good subtle movements to make tacklers miss. I think at 6'1", 207 pounds, he's one of those bigger outside receivers that this draft kind of lacks. Another player that's kind of like that is Michael Wilson. You'll see comps to him, Michael Thomas, but not as reliable hands. 6'1", 215 down at Stanford. Injury concerns are very big with this guy though, so we'll see if the Ravens kind of avoid a player like that. Marvin Mims is in this class, very fast. Like, what is it? 4.38, 40, brother of Denzel. So at first I wanted to like write him off because of it, but people started like saying you should grow up and actually look at him. So I did.
Not be a middle schooler about it, you saying?
That's right.
Your brother sucks. You suck too.
Your brother greatly disappointed me, and I tilted it like crazy. 5'11", 184, Oklahoma. Good breakout year. Punt returner, dynamic. Blocks for the rock as well. High points well. I just think I'm not super... I don't trust that he can, get off press coverage. I think he could get, messed up on short to intermediate routes, get his time messed up, get off track. So don't love that about him. Josh Downs is an interesting player. People all over the place with him. He's shifty and will win the first 5 yards. After that, he'll probably get tackled. But he just is really good at finding soft spots, and that's valuable. But he's probably better than the slot. Oh, all right. And I'll kind of wrap it up with 2 last prospects, or 3. I'll do 3 prospects, and then we'll maybe do a few others. Leave it at that. Zay Flowers has been super highly regarded, maybe the wide receiver 2 for many people, linked to the Ravens early on. Explosive and fluid. The guy's just total baller. He's got that dog in him. There you go. That's that line comes out for the first time. Played 2/3 of his snaps outside. I could see him being a lot of fun. And Jordan Addison, a lot of people like him. Some people have him like wide receiver 1. He played with Pickett in Pittsburgh, and then he transferred to USC to play with Caleb Williams, so he's obsessed with having good quarterbacks. He kind of reminded me of Hollywood when I was watching him on film. Runs a good whip route. Just, he plays pretty well. I don't love him, though, at 22. And then lastly, like the guy that was pretty high on everyone's list early in the process and then fell down the ranks is Quinn Johnson, 6'4", 210 out of TCU. He has, that super big size. You see him get away from guys, the way he moves in the open field, the way he blocks, but his catching sucks. Like his technique for catching is terrible. I don't know how that would translate to the NFL. For being 6'4", he plays like he's 5'11". Like he just does not high point well, body catcher. And that is like so damning. I'm very concerned about his ability to turn that around at the next level. And I think it could be the end of him. And it's like one of those things, like if he can figure that out, he probably is the best prospect in this class or damn close. But it's a huge bargain. Like it's a huge gamble. And I don't know who's going to take the leap of faith that he's going to be able to figure it out. So wrap it up with that.
Whew, there's a lot there.
I know. That was like half of them.
Yeah, but I do have to say, like, you mentioned some guys that independently, when I was watching the film, like, I earmarked these guys as, like, if they're available in third round, Ravens should take a shot. And how do I know the Ravens should take a shot? And then I'm not, just totally off base here? Because there's rumors that the Steelers have brought these guys in for visits. And we know that the Steelers know exactly what they're doing here. But yeah, you mentioned Jonathan Mingo. Man, he makes a lot of exciting plays on tape. Like you said, he's big-bodied. His highlight reel, they're running screens to him all the time, and he is excellent at that. That's something our offense could definitely use. I know we tried to do that with Duvernay last year. Maybe in Monken's offense it'll be better to do, but we know that that's part of an offense, part of our offense that's been lacking for a while. Will this guy's skill set in that transition to the NFL? I don't know. I'm not good enough a scout to say, just because he could do it in college, he can do it in the league. But I think this guy, it could be a matchup nightmare. I'll admit I haven't done enough research into him to understand what are the drawbacks. Like, why is this guy not listed in, consistently a top 10? Because he's pretty much like in the mid-teens, I think, if you look at a lot of boards as far as the prospect lists at this time. So, yeah, I mean, he looks great. And also you mentioned Jaden Reed from Michigan State, senior coming out. You look at his route running, you look at his hands, very solid guy. His production in college was, you look at that, since he's been a freshman, he was on the scene and he was making plays for them. I think he eclipsed at least 500 receiving yards in all of, almost. He had 407 his sophomore year, but yeah, 797 as a freshman, 1,026 in 21, only 636 as a senior. Again, you also have to understand, if you're listening to this coming from our perspective, we're just learning about these guys. The three of us hardly watch any college football, so I can't tell you why he did better from just a pure stats perspective his junior season than senior. I don't know what their quarterback situation was there, but I mean, you see consistent production on this guy. I think both of these guys now. I feel like we talked about this last year with George Pickens and Alec Pierce. Both those guys were guys that we talked about last year. We liked this, maybe the Ravens could get them in the third round if they slip, and then everyone else looked at them too, and they're like, oh yeah, those guys are pretty good. We're going to draft them in the second round because they're actual good players. I don't know if Mingo and Jalen are those guys this year, but of the guys who are ranked outside the top 10 consistently, I don't know if they're ranked outside the top 10 in every list. Those are the two guys that have stuck out the most to me right now as the most complete. Are there other guys that do some specific things that you're like, oh, if maybe they're good in this role? Sure, there's other guys like that. If you look at Rashee Rice from SMU, another guy, big-bodied like Mingo, 6'2", although he's considerably slimmer at 203. But you watch his tape, he's excellent at contested balls, but limited route tree. He runs nines and posts. That's pretty much it. His highlight tape is literally him running 9 route after 9 route and just jumping over cornerbacks, which is great. But it's Can you do anything else? I don't know. But and then another guy you mentioned, gosh, there's so many players here.
I know.
I think it's the UNC guy. Who's the UNC guy?
Oh, Downs.
Yeah, Downs. Excellent as a slot guy. Very, excellent there. Great route running on those short routes. Did very well in the red zone in college. But I think what you said it perfectly. It's like once you get out of those 5 to 10 yard routes, I don't know what the guy does for you. But I mean, both those guys have skill sets that you look at that and you're just like, okay, maybe as a 3rd or 4th round pick. The Ravens have a lot of guys who are, for lack of a better term, one-trick ponies. They aren't complete package, so I don't know if that's where they want to go. But yeah, I mean, as far as guys who might be available in 3rd round, like Mingo and Reed right now are at the top of my list with what I've been looking at right now.
Totally, man. We'll see if they can fall to the 3rd or what will end up happening with the Ravens being able to try to acquire one of these guys. Definitely a few other players that people like as well. We won't go into them right now. Maybe we'll talk about them in our Players to Target episode. But, yeah, I think that's pretty good for wide receiver. You want to take it away?
I'm not done.
Oh, you're not done. Peter wants to...
And I mean, in fairness, maybe this isn't the right question for this pod. Maybe this is a few weeks from now. But I do think, let's suppose the Ravens, you don't trade Lamar. We stay at 23. And at that point, Quentin Johnson is available. There's a lot of hype around Jackson Smith and Jigba. I think he's gone by 23.
22.
22. 22.
If he's gone
22.
by 23, does that mean we're taking
22. No, I'm just giving you plenty of sound bites there that you can pick from to blur over me for that. But yeah, I mean, it's so interesting because we saw a huge run on wide receivers last year, but the questions about Quentin Johnson's hands are legitimate. I don't know if this is a fair comparison, but you look at, Torrey Smith was never the best, had never had the best technique of catching of the football. If you view this guy as a more athletic Torrey Smith, like if he's available at 22, I mean, let's think about this for real. Would we be okay with the Ravens pulling the trigger on this guy? I think it's a legitimate question based on where you're seeing him land in mock drafts right now, which is around that pick 20 to 25 range.
Potentially, yeah.
I mean, yeah, it depends. Like, it really, to me, it depends on like what corners are available. Other players in general.
Yeah, I think it's a big thing. I mean, I really liked this just kind of like research process of just going through a bunch of names. Kind of what you mentioned earlier, Alec, to kind of get a feel for the class is. I think the benefit of that is just like knowing relative like the position group of like if you're the Ravens at 22 and what are you looking at picking, right? Just take a look at the overall quality of each like position group and figure out like okay, where are the Ravens going to target? Like if assuming we don't have any holes and you want to go best player available, all that stuff like. I think it's a little bit more interesting that way, I guess. But I mean, directly to kind of answer your question, Peter, like, I mean, yeah, that seems, for a player like that to be, kind of like a Torrey Smith-esque player. I mean, I feel like that's pretty good. I mean, the Ravens are always like trying to find guys that can contribute at receiver. Torrey's the most successful. Yeah, probably like the most successful, receiver that they picked ever at that position. Like Hollywood didn't have the longevity, Bateman's not necessarily there, so sign me up, sure.
Yeah, I'm looking at it. Jason Ronaldo's film is big board. You got 4 quarterbacks that kind of like will probably get picked before 22 that shift off these players. So he has Johnson currently at 24, so plus 4 is 28. Hyatt at 27. That's with the adjustment already. And then like Addison around 19, Flowers at 17, etc. With that kind of said, I could see us doing that. I really like some of these corners so much. But like realistically, a lot of the corners I love,
they could be gone.
They should be gone. Like I don't know, man. I think it's so silly. Like I saw, like initial mocks of Gonzalez being like, drafted in the late teens, early 20s, and I was like, oh, if he's still available past 10, I'll be shocked. And now like that's a new consensus. It's like, and I'm like, you look at these other guys too; they're all pretty darn good. I'm like, I don't know. I feel like they go. There's a premium position. Everyone needs corners, so we'll see how it falls. But like, I think if one of the top 3 corners fall, like sign me up. Just snag them. I don't care what wide receivers are left. Like I want the corner. But yeah, that's like literally over even Jackson Smith and Jigbo. Like that's how I see it. So we'll see how it plays out. I think this is like the trickiest thing, honestly. Keen to see how the board falls for the Ravens.
Yeah, I think I'm right with you. There are some cornerbacks I also really like, which we'll talk about next episode. But honestly, I mean, if he's there, I would love it if the Ravens took him. I don't think he needs to be the perfect prospect if Bateman lives up to what we think he can be. He can be the number 3 option in this offense, and they can just try and figure out how it works with him, because a guy that's size and that athleticism, if you can unlock that, it might be inconsistent, but I think it could add a dimension to this offense that'll be huge. And there is a route that he does bust. I think that we can all see that route, and it's with his hands. That's the thing holding him back, and it's a pretty big thing. But yeah, definitely an interesting prospect.
He reminds me of X Factor too much.
There is that too. Yeah, that was I was.
It's literally
want
my
to bring him up.
It's my comp for
Yeah.
him is X Factor. Feels like the same guy.
Well, and that's fair, because like what was Perryman when we drafted him? Everyone was like, oh, he's Torrey Smith but more athletic. What did we just say about Quentin Johnson right now? So,
Oh man.
you might have answered our questions right there.
He's drafted. Purple. What number does he want?
All right. Anyways, so next position group we're going to look at is a position group. I don't know if the Ravens go this route, this draft, but I could certainly see a path where they would, and that's the running back position. We know that this is Edwards' last year under contract. It seems unlikely to me that the Ravens would sign both Edwards and Dobbins to a second deal. And as much as we love Gus, Dobbins is definitely the more dynamic of those two players, the more, unique. So it wouldn't shock me if the Ravens, if they felt that it made sense with their capital, and depending on who's there on the board, as always, would go for a replacement to Edwards. But, it brings up a question. If you do that, do you go with a guy who has Gus's style, keep that in your offense, or do you go with a guy who's more of a receiver? We've talked about several times how we think Dobbins can develop into that, but right now, last we've seen of him, not really that guy, and neither really is Justice Hill. Do you want to draft a guy who can mold into that? But I guess to start with, because I think these two players are more likely to be available in the 3rd round, which is where the Ravens, the earliest they would. There's no way they draft a running back first overall with their first pick. They won't have the first overall pick anyway. Two guys that have really stuck out to me. You got Roschon Johnson from Texas, 6'2", 223, senior last year, who backed up guy who multiple people are calling the best running back prospects to come out since Saquon Barkley, Bijan Robinson. A lot of the scouting reports you read on Johnson is like, this guy is the prototypical 2 back. Like, he's excellent in short yardage. He has a lot of good feel there, and he's been a backup before in Texas. He had the option to transfer, but decided to stay at Texas and, be a team player there. I think that's a little unfair to then just assume, like, oh, well, since he was fine doing that then, that he'll be fine doing that for his NFL career. But, the narrative's there. I think he's a guy who could fill in Gus's role very well. And another guy, and this guy really reminds me of Gus's running style when I watched his tape, Tank Bigsby, 6', 213, out of Auburn. Just a guy, when he gets the ball, his legs are always churning, has a solid cut move that he'll use and then just hit the hole. Doesn't really have open field moves like Gus. Has kind of that upright style, kind of swerving slowly in and out when he makes the big runs. But also a guy great in the goal line. But I mean, honestly, there are a lot of good prospects here in this draft. This is not like last year's draft, in my opinion. last year's running back draft, I feel like we were really struggling to find guys outside of that top two of Breece Hall and Ken Walker. We did call Dameon Pierce, check mark there. But yeah, I mean, unlike last year where we were like really struggling to find names, there's a lot of names here. And I don't know if you guys have seen other prospects that you had that look like good fits. There is another guy I want to talk about. I think he's going to go either second round or early third before the Ravens would have a shot. But those two guys, Johnson and Bigsby, I think could be available in the later rounds if the Ravens are looking for a running back there.
Sure. I mean, we're two positions deep, and we already have a conflicting opinion, or like not opinion, but like conflicting resources for this third round pick. You know, like how are we going to use it? You know, going to go get this running back. And my thought is like we can't draft a running back this year. Maybe with a very late pick we can draft one if one of these guys you like is still there. But I do not believe it's responsible, honestly, to draft a running back preparing for next year when you already have invested in 3 running backs. Like I feel like when they invested money into bringing back Justice Hill, they closed the door on using draft capital on a running back. Now, undrafted, for sure, bring somebody in. This is a really deep class. You can find a stylistic fit that I think will be good and maybe is able to rise to a contributor next year. But I can't really see any of these guys dropping where there's such a value relative to the other positions still on the board that I ever want to take them. That said, I mean, the prospects you brought up, I do like Roschon. I think Roschon Johnson has the ability to be a kind of all-round back. I also do think, though, it's worth pointing out Dobbins is under contract either next year. So you could be drafting for either skill set. And I don't know if they bring him back. They might. I definitely think it's a higher chance than Gus. But yeah, we'll see. I truly do think running back will be next year's problem. And they won't address it this year in the draft. But again, lots of good names, lots of stylistic fits, and an undrafted free agent is almost guaranteed.
Yeah, I think you said it well. Like I'm kind of with you in terms of just the Justice Hill signing was kind of just the sign that this probably wasn't going to happen. Now, I mean, you know, stranger things have happened. I mean, just think like, you know, last year in the first round, the Ravens were like, you know, there's no way that Kyle Hamilton is going to fall to us, and he did. Like sometimes it might happen. Like I think if the chips fall where they do, and you know, a guy like Roschon or something shows up, then I think, you know, the Ravens could very seriously take a look at that player. But yeah, I'm with you too. Like, yeah, out of all the skill sets, I think if you do bring somebody in, it has to be somebody who can kind of be that sort of like Gus Edwards role of like a good second back. It doesn't have to be like the fastest back on the field, but somebody who can pick up positive yards, hopefully be a force in pass protection, contribute a little bit in the passing game, but it's not crucial. Justice Hill can kind of fill that role, at least for this year. I mean, there are certainly a lot of good names here. Yeah, I just think that they're I kind of with you. I think they're probably going to be mostly for other teams this year.
Never know which way the Ravens will go. I could certainly see them taking a running back this year with just, I mean, I get what we're saying with Hill, and they did give him a 2-year contract. I just also at the same time, you know, I love Justice Hill. I do, but he still hasn't done it consistently enough, and all 3 of these guys have an injury history. So, you know, I do think with a class that is as deep as it is at running back, I agree it's unlikely, but I wouldn't write it off that the Ravens won't go running back given what their situation is. And I mean, hate to say it, but we don't know whether or not the Ravens will have an experienced quarterback there. So if you don't have Lamar, then the running game becomes incredibly imperative, and so you're going to need as many options as you can to not have to fall back on the veteran train that they've done. So I could certainly see it, but at the same time, there's certainly lots to say that they might not.
I'm just burned by Beatty. I feel like they tried this last year and it completely like failed them. They drafted a running back when they really didn't have a clear role for them to get playing time. They languished on the practice squad. They got disgruntled and left, and then they, you know, are doing other things. I just think like, and they even had injuries last year, and they decided to use somebody else, right? So like, I'm hoping that we had a nice year of J.K. Dobbins and Gus Edwards, injuries. But like they've proven they're not even going to use these guys in a way. I
disagree with that though. I mean, I don't think we can know for certain. Like, was Beatty not making the field because they were just like, we just want to redshirt this guy basically, or was it they wanted him to get out there, but he just wasn't, he wasn't progressing as they wanted to. I think it's kind of hard to say.
Yeah, I don't know.
But yeah, I mean, early season could definitely understand it, right? Because with the injury concerns to Gus and Dobbins, are they going to be ready? And the answer was they weren't. So, I mean, are you going to put a rookie Beatty out there with Justice Hill, who's also coming off an injury, or are you going to put
right, exactly,
the ghost of Mike Davis and all these players out there? Like, beginning of the season was a pass. Like, Beatty was not in their plans, I think, that soon. But end of the season, maybe.
I love it. I love it when we're being honest enough about our opinions to disagree. Really makes for good pod, because we really don't know. We really don't know. They always do something every year that is out of left field for us.
Oh, for sure. I mean, yeah, nothing's outside the realm of possibility with the Ravens. Let me tell you that. But I don't know. I feel like the big thing too is you mentioned the quarterback situation. I think if you assume Lamar, I think you don't invest in running back, right? And if you don't have Lamar, I don't think running backs are going to be what saves us. I think we're already good. I don't know. Like, yeah, we'll see. That's always going to be the wild card until it's not, right?
Well, I guess that's a good transition for the next position group then.
Sure.
Quarterback, and good golly, in the past this has been a category we've looked at and just been like, is there a guy at the back end of the draft that makes sense as a crapshoot backup? And now this year, we're really looking at the whole board, aren't we? We're looking at, do you want to look at a mid to late round guy as a security, backup in case we could develop into a starter if Lamar doesn't sign, or really just to back up Lamar when he does sign? Are we looking at one of the later first-round guys who would be around there at 23, maybe, because who knows if we're going to go back to the big run on quarterback, or in an outlandish scenario that could happen, but it seems to be unlikely given what we know, are the Ravens able to trade Lamar for a top 10 pick, with, say, Detroit or Indianapolis, and have a shot at one of these top 4 quarterbacks, We're really looking at it all here, and so I don't know how we want to start looking at this. Which of these situations we think is the most likely, and will the Ravens even know what's going on here with Lamar? Will they have any more clarity? The answer, unfortunately, is probably no.
All I can say is I think I do believe that the Ravens are not going to make a move to trade up for a quarterback unless there is like a Hollywood-esque like draft day trade that happens that nobody knows about. It's going to be extremely under wraps, and even then, like, wow, that would be wild. So I've sort of taken the top guys off my board: Young, Stroud, Levis, Richardson. I think they're probably all going to be gone before the Ravens pick at 22. So I've been sort of looking at the guys after that to try and figure out, like, is there anybody here that could be better than what Huntley is right now, or somewhere close, so that basically we have a bridge quarterback. Overall, I feel like the class as a whole, because I probably looked at maybe like 8-9 guys or something. Oh boy, I don't know. Everyone's got a drawback. I feel like this is like the hardest part of the draft, is just figuring out like who's going to be like amazing, is because you see things, you're like, oh man, this is really good. And then you see things, you're like, oh man, this really sucks. And then you look at another person to look at, and it's like the opposite. Like, they're good at everything the other person sucks at, and they're bad at everything that the person is really good at. So it's just like all over the place. I think there's probably like maybe like 2 names that I'd be like, oh, okay, maybe it's worth a shot, but yikes. I don't know. I don't see a long-term starter like solution here if we move on from Lamar. I think Lamar is going to be here 2023, and the Ravens are just going to have to take a risk that he's going to not like hold out or something. I don't know.
I have a lot of opinions about these top 4 quarterbacks. I don't really think it's only 3, but these quarterbacks that people consider the top 4, and out of situational awareness of my draft picks in Dynasty, I hate talking about them at all. But I have come clean that
You're picking before both of us, aren't you?
look, man, anyone in our leagues can listen to this show.
All right.
I know correspondent K Fish is in front of me in one of our leagues. All right, like he's at 103 and I'm at 104 and I hate it. Or no, I have 103 and he has 102 and I hate it. But anyways, I definitely know how I rank these guys. It's not even close in many ways. I'm extremely curious how the rest of the league views them and how this all plays out. And like Anthony Richardson's awesome. CJ Stroud is a double. I think he'll be great. Bryce Young, I really just don't know how I feel about him. But he has done everything other than grow a couple more inches to prove that he'll be a good NFL quarterback. And Will Levis can, have fun in the XFL eventually. I don't know. That's where I'm at with these players. I do think there's some interesting later round guys, so maybe we should talk about them.
I think we should. Unfortunately, though, I think we have to talk about Levis and Richardson because here's the thing. It seems like there's a lot of rumors going around that like CJ Stroud in Carolina is like a done deal. Who knows if those are true or not. Makes a lot of sense to me. He seems like by far the safest of these quarterbacks. Does he have the highest ceiling? That's questionable. I think you could argue that Richardson and maybe even Young have a higher ceiling, but yeah, certainly I think his floor is higher. And then Bryce Young, I mean, he's been mentioned as one of the top prospects here for so long. Houston seems like I don't think those guys get past the first. They're going to be drafted really early,
Sure.
Right? Look, man, I know it's unlikely. I still see a possibility that some people are blowing smoke and a trade happens with either the Colts or the Lions that sends Lamar Jackson that way. I don't know if it's likely. If I were either of those franchises, I don't know if I wouldn't do it if I were the Colts because I think they've got so many issues that Lamar's not going to alone isn't going to fix it. Detroit, like Alec has talked about, is in perfect spot for Lamar, but they seem. But at the same time, Goff is had a great year for them last year. So, they didn't make the playoffs, though. They might want to think pretty hard about that, although I think that had more to do with their defense than Goff. But look, I don't think it's outside of the realm of possibility that a draft day trade happens. We were blindsided by the Marquise Brown trade. At least here we know that Lamar has publicly said that he wants a trade. Is it a bluff or not? I don't know, but he's at least put those words out there. That's more than we knew with Hollywood. I mean, I guess he scrubbed his Instagram, whatever. Again, that's outside of my contract, so I try to not. I don't really remember that stuff.
No, you said your contract only had to do with tweets.
Damn it! I gotta rework that.
Yeah, well, renegotiations are passed for the season of One Winning Pod. I'm sorry.
That's right. The league year just started, didn't it?
Yeah, you have to put it in your next year's performance package. All right, we'll review it, and you might get a 10,000% raise, but you'll still make $0.
So I mean, I do see two possibilities here. I see the possibility. I think it's unlikely, but the possibility that the Ravens are at 4 or 6, and if you don't have Lamar, you're looking seriously at Levis or Richardson. I also see the possibility that one or both of these guys fall because while both of them have a lot of very exciting moments on tape and a lot of exciting physical traits, there's a lot of drawbacks on their tape as well that are pretty well documented. It just goes down to like Alex saying, how highly are the NFL front offices weighing those deficiencies right now for these guys, for lack of a better term, these things that they need to grow into, and how are they projecting them to grow into that? Could that cause them to fall? I think it's possible they could fall down to 23. I mean, look at. I think that both these guys, Levis and Richardson, are better prospects than Malik Willis was last year. But in early mock drafts at this time, Malik Willis was a top 10 pick, and he dropped all the way to the 3rd round. So, if you're the Ravens, let's see, even you still have Lamar at 23. Do you draft one of these guys to put some pressure on him and just be like, man, we got to keep moving. Are you here or not? I mean, it's been done before. Phillip Rivers drafted with, when they still had Breeze, so. Okay,
Rodgers,
that's a poor example.
Rodgers and Love.
With Favre.
Rodgers and Love.
So I think those are both poor examples because in those Packers cases, those quarterbacks were aging. Like they were both over 35. And then Breeze didn't break out.
I feel like Rodgers and Lamar is a perfect comp right now of like
Sure.
Rodgers loves to do his own thing, Lamar's doing his own thing. Like
Yeah, sure. You'll give that one. Breeze and Rivers not good because Breeze actually sucked until they
was an
drafted
injury.
Rivers
That was an
because he
injury.
sucked. And then Breeze broke out. Anyways, thoughts on that? That's why I think we need to talk about Levis and Richardson a little bit.
I think an early mock had Richardson go into the Ravens. And, like, look, if Richardson's there at 22, sign me up. Done. I'll take him. I'd laugh at the other 21 teams like I did back in 2018 when we drafted Lamar. Like, this has... So I feel like this has Lamar written all over it. The same, like, storyline with Richardson. Even though they're different prospects. Like, don't get me wrong. They're not the same, but they have a similar story almost, I guess, with how like teams may be valuing them. I mean, I remember like that's why this podcast exists, right? Like there was a lot of enthusiasm going into the draft about Lamar Jackson, at least from my end. I liked Lamar before he was even drafted, right? And then like we drafted him, like when they traded him in, I was like, they're doing it. They're getting Lamar. Like this is so exciting. And like the new chapter of the Ravens was born. And I'd be so disappointed like if we got Richardson because that means that chapter is going to be closing. However, I would be excited as like the next best thing, right? Like I do think if we got Richardson, I'd be thrilled for the organization going forward. It always sucks giving a comp to a player like Josh Allen because they're like really good. But like, I think it's super, it just, the shoe fits wear it. Like it's so good of a comp of like why this could work out. I think it'll be a roller coaster ride in his development, but his ceiling is undeniable. And I think his floor is pretty safe. I know that he's made bad throws. I know that, you know, he's a young starter and he's quote unquote raw. But the things he gets right and his pocket presence and his awareness is super hard to teach. You know, they thought, oh, you know, Sam Darnold, he throws so well. We'll teach him how to like read progressions. And like, he didn't have the ecosystem. He didn't have the line. He was seeing ghosts and he never developed. Well, the Ravens have an ecosystem. They could drop him in and he could, you know, grow and learn, I think. So the Ravens are uniquely situated to be able to take on a quarterback like Richardson and like him hit the ground running. I think he's stellar. I would be stunned if he makes it past pick 4 personally, but that's, I say maybe pick 6 or 7. If he makes it past 6 or 7, you know, like Lions pass on him and the Raiders pass on him, like, oh boy, you know, things are happening as far as like his descent could continue. But I think that those teams are going to make a huge mistake if they pass on him. So we'll see. Like I think super duper highly of Richardson, so highly that I wouldn't be shocked if the Panthers take him. And the only reason I say that is because you gave up so much capital to get that number 1 pick. Go get like the funnest guy on the board, you know, go for it. Like, I mean, Stroud's going to be good. Don't get me wrong. I think Stroud's going to be a great NFL quarterback, but I wonder if he's going to be exceptional. And I think like, if you want to take those big swings, Richardson's your guy.
I see that the interior halls of the building formerly housing the James Prochet fan club have been completely readorned with Anthony Richardson decorum.
He's so fun. He's so fun.
Yeah, I mean, my take is I hope the Ravens don't have to make a pick between these two. I agree. Like the Richardson ceiling is unreal. And I've actually likened up to him a little more than I did originally. I got a little too caught up in, well, his stats sucked. But it was like, he was a first-year starter, so like that's, you know, forgiven a little bit. You know, there's things he's done. You've looked at the tape. There's some tape that doesn't look great where he's throwing some picks where you're just like, what? Who was there? Why'd you do that? But there's also some plays where you see that he's going through progressions well and putting the ball where it needs to be in the zone. I would still take C.J. Stroud over him personally, but you know, he could be good. And Will Levis is just, I just don't know. I don't know. My initial take on him was I didn't like the tape. Then I watched some breakdowns of some people who pointed out some things he does well, but I'm still just like, I don't know about that guy. So basically we're saying please, Ravens, Lamar, make it work so we don't have to think about the quarterback position, please. Well, I'm saying that. I don't want to speak for all of us, but Richardson and Levis make me nervous.
Yeah, no, I mean, I hear what you guys are saying. Like, if Richardson were to make the fall, like, out of all of the options here, like, that does really change the franchise. But honestly, you're probably in like the best situation. I mean, just looking at some of the other guys who might fall later. So I mentioned him earlier, Hendon Hooker from Tennessee. Just I'm not super impressed with his game. Like, he's got a decent bit of mobility, but honestly, in terms of just like the kind of like the quarterback position, like I don't know. I felt like the receivers kind of really like drove that offense, and I'm not really sure you plug him in and he's like, quality. He might be okay, but like, I don't know. I'm just not interested. Another guy we have on here, like, I'm really curious what you guys think of this guy, but Tanner McKee, I feel like I should ask that first because I have strong opinions on him, but like, what do you guys think of, like, for a mid-round, like, is this a guy that the Ravens would target or you're remotely interested in?
McKee has interesting skill set. You look at his tape, there's definitely some throws that I saw and I'm just like, that's NFL quality. There's a really nice throw he makes in the mobility, rolling out to the pocket. I think it was against either USC or UCLA, where he just hits it perfectly, his receiver perfectly in the back of the end zone. The guy can throw darts. If we're talking about 2008, this guy is like a second round pick minimum, borderline mid-round, first-round pick. I question how well he could work in today's NFL. That said, I think that there's a possibility his skill set would work well in a Todd Monken offense. What we saw with Baker, what we saw with Winston. McKee, I think he's more Phillip Rivers than Flacco. I don't think his arm is super special from a deep perspective, but I think he's more accurate than Flacco was. But the question is just like, does that style still play in the NFL anymore? Because the guy's not mobile at all. Even the concepts that they ran in Stanford, I was watching JTL Sullivan's breakdown of his film. Like, he was calling out different plays as just like, no one runs this in the NFL anymore. This is literal dinosaur offense. Like, and like, there are plays, the concepts that Stanford used a lot last year, apparently. Again, going off JTL Sullivan's word, I didn't watch any Stanford games, but yeah, he is intriguing. But at the same time, I view him like Levis and Richardson at the same time. I'm like, could be a solid guy, could be like a Ryan Tannehill-esque guy at the next level, but, well, that's a ceiling, man. So it's like, again, just sign Lamar and let's move on, please.
I haven't had a chance to fully scout him, but I'm reading a quick scouting report right now, and it has Alex red flag of quarterback prospects. I do not draft people that do not have good pocket presence. Period. End of story. I'm out. Like that, like, literally, I do not care. If you have bad pocket presence, I'm out. Like, I don't care how good you throw a ball. Zach Wilson. If you don't have pocket presence, you can't play in the NFL. That's just not how it works. Sorry.
Yeah. I got to admit, when I looked at him, like, definitely thinking, like, originally it was just like, this guy looks like Flacco. I think they're, from like a pure, like, arm strength and kind of like frame, it looked very similar, I think, to like Delaware. Now, the one thing that, like, is pocket presence is one thing. His footwork is god awful. It's so
yeah,
bad.
It's not great.
Like, when you talk about mobility, like, there's the ability of, like, being able to design runs and, like, maybe make a guy miss in the open field. Like, if you're having trouble, like, keeping your feet upright when you're trying to roll out, like, oh my goodness, like, how do you play quarterback? I don't know. We kind of had them on here, and I feel like some people have been high on him. He's been kind of shooting up boards just because of his, like, raw intangibles, but, like, man, like, wow, like, I don't know, like, I feel like just from, like, some of these other names, like, I'll admit, like, some guys, like Jake Haener, to me, like, in terms of, like, his tape, or a guy like Clayton Tune, like, I'm more excited about them in terms of, like, what they have on film. But I'll fully admit, like, age is a concern. I think Tune is like a 5th-year senior. Haener is, like, fairly small. So, like, in terms of just, like, will they translate to the NFL? I don't know if that's going to be the possibility. But you just, like, look at the tape and you're just like, I don't know. They look a lot more exciting to me. Like, they've got better pocket presence. They can actually keep their feet upright when rolling out. Like, a decent bit of mobility. Whereas like Tanner is like, how is this guy like actually maneuvering the pocket? It's just crazy.
Honestly, guys, I can't believe we haven't talked about him yet. Like Stetson Bennett, to me, is the obvious late round, undrafted. Good gracious, if he's undrafted, if the Ravens don't get him, I don't know what's going on. Like we're drunk at the wheel. I feel like you probably do have to draft him. Like, but he's so obvious. He's so obvious for so many reasons. Not only is the Monken connection there, but like I think he's better than people think. And if he wasn't 5'11", he'd be a good prospect. And
Dude.
Peter's shaking his head.
Wow.
No,
I'm curious. Peter, what do you think? Wow.
You see his tape. I don't know, man. Every throw he makes, everyone's wide open. I just don't see. I don't see him making contested throws at the next level. He doesn't have a quarterback body. The guy is. We want to draft a rookie who's only 10 months younger than Lamar Jackson.
I think that's a risk. I would agree with you.
I'm 100% out on Stetson Bennett. If I'm wrong about that, I'm fine. I'll take the L. I'll buy a Stetson Bennett, I don't know, Patriots jersey. I'm sure seems like a guy Belichick would like, scrappy small white guy. But no, I don't think Stetson Bennett is going to be a guy who is going to be a long-term effective starter in the NFL.
Sure, but I think like I'm not looking at him to be our long-term starter. I'm looking at him as like is he better than Huntley person?
I don't think he is. I think I would rather Huntley, man.
That's fine. Yeah, it's fine. That's fine if you think that. Like totally.
Yeah.
I'm just saying like I'm looking at a Huntley replacement / a bridge to a possible higher draft pick that like you hope is the next Brock Purdy. And I don't know. I don't hate it. So
Yeah.
we'll see. But I think like
Well, that's why
it's
I
so
have McKee on
obvious,
this
the
list.
connection.
McKee is
I think it's so obvious.
McKee's
though, like,
my guy, but
yeah.
yeah, I think that's the thing though, is like you're really throwing darts if we're talking about the Ravens drafting a mid to late round guy as a bridge guy to whoever's next if they've missed out on those top 4 and Lamar. Leash.
Yeah, I think looking at some of the late round guys, I originally thought maybe Jake Haener might be the guy. I think he's just a little too small. I think physically, I think it'll just be hard for him to kind of make the next level. But I think my two guys were Bennett and Clayton Tune. Yeah, I don't know. Just looking at like kind of the level of quarterback, and I'm right with Alec. Like Stetson, like he's not the starter. He's the bridge. He might be as good as Huntley. He might have, a little bit of a leg up just having played with Monken. But I mean, he's got like, I feel like he has way better mobility than a lot of the other guys after like the top 4. He was involved in like some, had some QB sneaks, like QB draws, like with some design runs, like a decent bit of speed, to be honest. Even over some of these other guys, like Hendon Hooker, for example, like has a decent bit of mobility, but I thought Bennett looked a little bit more fast, I think. And then Tune, I thought just kind of had like a better arm. But yeah, he's just one of those like Bennett is going to be really old. And the question is basically like, how much more of a ceiling do they have? So yeah, pretty much any guys on these names after the top 4 are all like, can they be Huntley? And yeah, I don't know. But yeah, the Bennett one, man, that's just like too easy. But it would, I think it could work out for a year or so.
I think the whole NFL knows it's too easy, though. I don't think we'll get him for free. I think they have to be drafted.
There's no way he's undrafted. There's no way.
I don't know, man. I'm looking at these tight window throws in the highlights. I don't know what highlight video that Peter was watching. Everyone's wide open. These are awesome throws. Do we want to go to tight end? The tightest of ends? Or we want to do any more quarterbacks?
Oh, gosh. I think we should hit tight end.
Yeah, I think that's it for quarterbacks.
All right. Well, tight end, we're going to keep it super quick. Guys, I did a 1-hour show with Ken McCusick. I gone deep on these prospects. You should go listen to it if you actually care about tight ends because, yeah, we ended the show giving our chances of the Ravens actually drafting a tight end given like everything going on with them and the state of the position. I put it at 7%. He put it at 15%. And I don't know it's really worth talking about all these prospects in much depth. Maybe we can just talk about like what you guys think about us drafting one. And I will throw out a single name because he's not on anyone's boards really, but he's number 5 on mine. It's Daniel Barker, 6'3", 243 pounds out of Michigan State / Illinois. I would have thought he was bigger if you told me Like, I didn't know his height. He plays like 2 inches taller. He plays like larger, and I like his body control a lot. He makes tough catches. He blocks well for his side. He has a really good knack for knowing when to release his block and go to the next level. And I just love his enthusiasm, which is like such a silly thing to say, but I think it somewhat matters. He looks like he genuinely is having a ball playing the game of football, and every first down is a delight. And I like those kind of guys. So I really like him. I could see him being a surprise this year, and he's kind of like my guy of the whole group. And if the Ravens picked him in like the 5th or 6th round, I wouldn't even be mad. But I don't think they will, and I wouldn't be surprised if he's like available undrafted. But we'll see.
Yeah, apologies. I've not had a chance yet to listen to your episode. I put the Ravens' chances of drafting a tight end below 10%, so I have not looked at this year's class at all at this point. So that's all I can comment.
There's a lot of really cool guys for fantasy, potentially, in dynasty leagues, so I think you should check them out eventually, but yeah, I get it.
All right, so yeah, last position group to look at is linemen, and for now, right now, we've only got interior. Similar to tight end, we're looking at tackle right now as, look, the Ravens drafted Falalele last year. They have Morgan Moses right now. You got Pat McCarry there, who we know he can play tackle. And obviously Ronnie Stanley, thankfully, overcame his injury and was back to his all-pro form last year. Feels unlikely with limited capital that the Ravens are going to go tackle. They could. Maybe they didn't like what they saw out of Falele last year and think they need to find a replacement. Seems more likely that you're doing interior linemen because you lost Ben Powers. Zeitler, how much longer is he going to be around here? What do you have with Cleveland? He showed some promise, but we know that he has drawbacks in his game as well. So, ergo, we go to the interior linemen. And Chris, I wonder if you want to start this, because I'll be honest, I'm having a hard time finding guys in this year's draft. To me, it doesn't seem like a draft with a ton of talent. Granted, maybe I'm not looking hard enough, or I just suck at scouting interior linemen, which I do. But yeah, I don't know. No one really jumped out to me who might be available, because the Ravens aren't going to go with that in the first round. So 3rd round would be the earliest. There's 2 guys who are pretty freak athletes, Osiris Jones and Steve Avila, but I don't think they're going to make it past the 2nd. So I don't know. What were your initial thoughts, Chris, looking at this positional group?
Yeah, I think I think Avila is definitely exciting, but yeah, I think he's probably going to be one of the first cards off the board. So yeah, I'm not sure. I mean, I guess the Ravens really felt that he was really good. Like, might not be a bad pick at 22. I don't remember exactly where he's kind of trending, but I guess stranger things have happened. Yeah, I think overall, my kind of finding for this, honestly, is just like, it's so hard to project linemen at the next level. There's so many just like, hey, they played this in college, but, NFL teams are like, oh, you should play here instead. So, I mean, I feel like, there are a couple of guys who were like 6'5", 6'6", playing center. There are a couple of guys who were like 6'6", might be 340 pounds, and they're like, well, maybe you should play tackle. But they were guard in college. So I feel like you have a lot of these guys where you're like, you have to look at their body size and then look like, okay, at the NFL level, where do you fit more? And I do think it was a little bit more apparent, right? I think one guy that I had on my list who I think the Ravens might be interested in, I don't know where exactly he's going to fall, but Joe Tippmann out of Wisconsin played center for them. He's 6'6". He is massive. And, when you look at him trying to like play center, there's actually a good YouTube video from JM Football where he kind of broke down his tape. And basically all of his issues are that you're too tall. Like, you can't get the leverage that you need against these defensive tackles. If you were playing NFL caliber defensive tackles, you're going to lose all the time. And it's not that he's a bad player. It's just not a good fit. It just doesn't, he's got to be played somewhere else. So, I mean, the question is, with that height, like, could you be a big guard, or like, are teams looking at trying to move him to tackle? I think from some of the things that I saw, I think he was interesting. Like, maybe he could be a decent puller, has decent mobility. I think could, be able to get out in space. But he's got to work on his pass protection for sure. Got to be able to get the right leverage. And I think with the Ravens coaching staff, that could be a decent fit. I think eventually he could be there. I think fortunately they're probably not in a position where you need to have a person start right away. And to be honest, like, we have so many guard prospects who take years to develop. So, I think he could be a guy. Another one as well, like Ricky Stromberg out of Arkansas. I kind of liked him a little bit better. There's this one really good clip from him, reminded me so much of Yanda, of basically, there was like one running touchdown for the Arkansas offense, and it was basically Ricky Stromberg single-handedly won this play. He gets onto a combo block immediately to kind of let his guard turn a defensive tackle around, and then picks up a linebacker. Running back runs right behind him, untouched for a touchdown. Stuff like that of just, he's really good kind of at the run blocking. He did start at center the whole time. So I think the question is basically like, do you want to keep him at center, or is that a prospect and the Ravens be like, you know what, you're pretty good at run blocking, why don't you do guard, because you can have a big impact on that. I think he's kind of a guy I would just say, like, I don't know where NFL teams want to put him. If somebody likes him better at a center, maybe he might go before, but I'd love him at guard. I think he'd be pretty good at that too. But yeah, over a couple other names, I think, as well. I'll have to look them up in a second. But is there one guy from, I'm trying to remember, one guy who's like 6'5", like 350 pounds or something, from Penn State or something? I'll have to take a look. But another one of those guys of like, body just doesn't fit guard necessarily. But yeah, just like unclear where to play him. Do you have him like a guard tackle tweener? Yeah, there are a lot of guys like that.
Well, if we're saying this guy is too big for center at 6'6", I mean, Ben Cleveland's also 6'6", so man, imagine that if we drafted Tippmann and we still have Cleveland around when Zeitler is no longer on the team, we're having a massive offensive line there. Can you imagine with Stanley, Cleveland, Tippmann, and Falele? We'll have tiny Tyler Linderbaum in between them, but man, that's going to be a massive tower of an offensive line.
Well, I don't know if you were distracted by the 25 different questions of asking about Lamar's tweets during the breakfast with Harbaugh. He did leave a little nugget that they were talking about Falele at guard, which is like, whoa. Talk about a monster human. Yeah, he said like he's not out of the question of like a guard competition. I'm like, dude, like, are you kidding me? But hey, I mean, maybe they're like, we want to get him on the field. I mean, that'd be nuts to see him as a guard. But yeah, that is an option. I haven't looked into these guys. I did notice O'Cyrus Torrence, pretty high up there. Steve of Vila, like these are all humans that are high up there, and I need to like actually watch them to have an opinion. But it wouldn't be crazy to me, I think, if Torrance is available at 22, if like the draft goes sideways. Not the worst pick, honestly. It's not sexy. Guards late in the first are not the worst, particularly if they turn out to be a great guard. But yeah, I could see us going that way. I could see us drafting in the third round as well. Like that pick is very desired right now. I can see it going corner as well. Like, I mean, that third round pick is gonna be so interesting because yeah, it's the next pick after the first, obviously, but also just like I feel like the third and fourth round are the fun zone of the draft. There's always interesting players there. It's just a matter of picking the right one.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I agree. If they go Osiris, it would be a little bit of a disappointment given how much we want him to go wide receiver, cornerback, and we have prospects that if they fell there would be like take him up in a heartbeat. But I mean, there is a lot of upside to this guy. He's an excellent athlete. He's a physical specimen, 6'5", 346. Does have some issues in pass protection, but I think that's something that can be coached up. It's mainly like if he gets beat right off the line, he can hold himself from what I've seen in the film, but it doesn't look great. But his run blocking is just exceptional. Was exceptional in college football. Just absolutely dominant there. So, if you're watching any Anthony Richardson tape, you can watch that concurrently as well and see what he's doing there. But he would be a really good prospect if the Ravens got him.
I think it's unlikely, but I think it's worth discussing maybe as a bookend, like as we talk about these contested picks. Baltimore's second or 22nd pick is worth 780 JJ points. Hard to find a direct trade partner that you're like, oh, this is like the obvious value. But if they fell to like an early day 2 pick in the 3rd round and also acquired either a late 2nd, early 3rd, don't hate it at all, mattering on how the board falls. If you get really spicy, maybe if the Jets trade their 42nd and 43rd, which seems unlikely, then they could pick there. I wouldn't hate that at all. I think there's a definite band of players from maybe like the 20th to 25th prospect of 40 that are all about the same, and that somebody else is going to get drafted earlier, and I feel comfortable with that option. So we'll see what trades are available to the Ravens. We'll see if they decide to trade a player, even that's not Lamar, maybe like a Patrick Queen to get into the 2nd round again or something. I think there's a lot of options to how they could find their way into more draft picks and more capital, and that will like dramatically change the board. But we'll have prospects that we've considered and things to look out for, and hopefully, I always think it's a big win if by the end of this process we stake our flags on a couple of guys, 1 or 2 of them become a Raven, because it's super hard to like tell how the board's going to fall and how the Ravens see these things. So I always think that's a big win.
So, we want to pick which of these guys we think is most likely a Raven?
No, I was just saying trading back is not crazy, and then also saying how like if we do trade back, we have a chance of getting maybe getting more of these guys than we think possible.
Well, maybe we do want to do that though. I think we've done that in years past. Like go out there and say which of these guys we think is most likely to be drafted by the Ravens.
Sure. Yeah, we have done that before.
I think we already said it earlier in the episode. My pick. I think that it is. I think it's Quentin Johnson.
I'm gonna go Zay Flowers.
Picking all the receivers, huh? I want to try and
There's
figure
like
out
25 more to pick from than this list that Alex generated here.
Yeah.
Say Cedric Tillman. It'll make me so happy.
I'm not gonna lie. I was actually really surprised that you're like, he's my guy. Like, I didn't even, it was like I said, it was one of those things when I was watching film on Hooker, and I was like, I don't know who these receivers are, but they just like keep consistently winning. And
Cedric Tillman is 100% my guy. Yeah, like flag player 9,000.
Yeah,
I think he's way underrated.
Yeah, Tillman. I think after watching a couple of those, I was like, yeah, this guy is pretty big. I definitely I'm trying to think. Out of the 2 here, I don't know. I feel like Tittman's got the better body type, but Stromberg I think is a little bit more interesting to me. But I'm just like, I'm not sure if the Ravens want a 6'3" guard. Like he's probably got like a decent size for that right now, but they may want somebody a little bit bigger. But I feel like from the film, like I kind of like Stromberg. He seems like one of those guys who like I think would absolutely thrive in our coaching scheme. We seem to do a really good job of developing guys. Like he just has like some of those intangibles and run blocking and being able to recover that I really liked from watching his film. So I'll go Stromberg. I think he might be a sneaky good pick, maybe in the later rounds as sort of a center guard prospect.
All right, there you have it. Well, we appreciate you guys listening to this mega episode about offensive prospects. We'll come to you next week with defensive prospects, a very interesting side of the draft as well. You can find us on Twitter at OneWinningPod. You can find us online at OneWinningPod.com. You can email us OneWinningPod@gmail.com. And we'll be back, like I said, next week with more draft content. Let us know if there's anyone else you want to hear about. Either side of the ball, and we'll make sure to talk about them during the course of our coverage. Go Ravens.